All right. What is up, everybody? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Oh, Nick's already ahead of it. As you can see, we've done a lot this offseason in terms of upgrading the production quality. Still have this great lighting behind me. Still have my same photo of the Brooklyn Bridge back there. It's been a minute, hasn't it? For those that are new here, the way this works is we talk some Chargers football and I drink one beer. Usually one beer. Unless you guys convince me to drink another one, or it's the end of the season and I have a bourbon. So I have a wedding coming up, my wedding, in, I don't know, 7 months or so. So we are currently on a wedding diet. And therefore, we're having a wedding diet Michelob Ultra. Just 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. If you guys want to do the beer wedding diet with me in solidarity, go ahead and crack yourself a Michelob Ultra. But how we always start these is everyone lets me know what they're drinking. So what's everybody drinking out there? Let me know. Hopefully it's a little bit tastier than a Michelob Ultra. Not to say that Michelob Ultra is not tasty, obviously. If you want to sponsor me, Michelob Ultra, I'm here and love your beer. However, you do drink it for a specific reason. And for me, that specific reason is getting things tight for the wedding. All right, what do we got in here? 100 milligram THC seltzer. Seems aggressive. Ohio is for lovers. Juicy IPA from Warped Wing. Love it. Kimchi fried rice. Love that. I have a take. Korean food has slowly become one of my favorite cuisines. I think it's like a top 5 cuisine for me now. I get it from this place called Mom and Bop in Santa Monica. They have bibimbap, but they also have this thing called tteokbokki. I'm probably butchering the name, but it's like rice cakes and fish cakes and like a ramen and like a red kind of kimchi sauce with cheese melted on top. Good Lord. So shout out Korean food. It's dank. Got a Coors Light, little Woodford Reserve, Big Wave, Modern Times Fruitlands, Pog Junchan, big Junchan guy. Helps my stomach. It's like I can drink alcohol, but also do things for my stomach that are beneficial. So that's great. Salty Crew Blonde Ale, Cherry Vanilla Coke Zero. We got a Coors Light, Allagash White. Shout out Allagash White. It's like a perfect beer. Buffalo Trace. Scott knows. We're still gunning for that Buffalo Trace sponsorship here. I don't know if anyone knows anyone at Buffalo Trace, but it's my favorite bourbon. Wild Turkey, Athletic alcohol-free IPA. Interesting. I've seen Athletic like have sponsored vendor spots at a lot of like concerts and stuff. I've never tried it because I don't necessarily see the value in drinking beer without the alcohol, but I know there's a lot of reasons to do it for some of you, so I'll have to try it at some point. We got Hennessy, Natural Light. I haven't had a Natural Light since college, probably. Blue Moon. Got a Watermelon LaCroix. Stella, great beer. Regular long neck bud. James says he's drinking a regular long neck bud. Those who have been a friend of the program for a long time know how I feel about Budweiser. Cannot go wrong with a classic Budweiser. We got a Duck Rabbit Milk Stout. We got some water. Always good to hydrate. Pacifico, can't go wrong there. Got an old fashioned. What kind of bourbon's in your old fashioned, King Kong? Let us know. Angel's Envy and Soda. Nicholas, great bourbon there. Little above my pay grade, honestly, but delicious bourbon. Usually drink it when I'm home at my parents' place. Got a Baja Blast. Hopefully you are drinking that with some Taco Bell. Shout out Taco Bell. Got a Turkey Neck Juice, Stone Ruination IPA. I've had a bunch of Stone IPAs. I don't know if I've had that one. We've got Harlan Brewing Hazy IPA, Crown Royal Whiskey and Coke, Coronado Cloudbreak Hazy IPA. All right, we got some good beers in the chat. in the Chad? Can I get Chads in the Chad? Two-Hearted IPA. Love Two-Hearted IPA. All right. Got a good crew in here. Lot to get to. I thought we just get into like a little Q&A session here. Like I'm here to sort of answer for you guys what you want to know. Obviously, we're 14 practices in training camp. Chargers had a preseason game on Saturday, so a lot of stuff to get to, but I feel like just start throwing your questions in there and we'll get into whatever you guys are thinking about as far as the Chargers. While you guys get your questions in there, if you are not subscribed to The Athletic, that's where I do my work. It's where I do all my writing. Click the link below and subscribe. In the link below is my practice report from today. Been doing practice reports from every single training camp practice with as much detail as I can pack into 1,500 words. Everything you need to know about training camp is in there. And then also you get access to all my writings, so all my features. I have a feature on Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley I published a couple weeks ago. Lots more to come before the season. And then all my content during the season, film breakdowns, columns off the game, stories from inside the locker room, everything you could possibly want about the Chargers. So if you like me on Twitter, if you've been following these streams before, like last season, like make sure you're subscribed. Click the link below and subscribe. That's my spiel. All right, let's get some questions in there. All right, you guys want an update on Alohi? I don't have anything on Alohi like super tangible. Saw him get off the bus today, had a sleeve on his left leg, was limping pretty noticeably. Stretched with the team and then kind of watched practice from the side. Didn't look like he was moving particularly well. So we'll see. You know, Brandon Staley didn't talk today, so we couldn't get an update on that front. So I don't have any, details on as far as what it is. I think it's safe to assume it's some sort of left leg injury. But we'll sort of see what happens here. Chargers are off tomorrow for practice, and then obviously joint practices with the Saints on Thursday and Friday. So we'll see if Alohi Gilman can participate in that. But he was at practice. It's usually a pretty good indication that it's not something super, super significant, because he would have been absent. So the fact that he was there and on the field, probably a good sign, but I'm not going to speculate any further. That's all I have for you guys on that front. All right. God, these questions didn't come fast. I gotta shake the cobwebs off here. All right. CJ Okoye going to make the 53? Most likely not. Actually, almost certainly not. But, he's raw. He literally just played in his first organized football game ever. So, this is a real project. All of these international pathway players tend to be huge projects because they aren't naturally football players for the most part. So how that's going to work is if he gets cut on cut down day on August 29th, which is exactly 2 weeks from today, he would have to go through waivers, which means that every team in the league would have the opportunity to claim him. They would have to make a corresponding move on their 53-man to claim him off waivers. He would have to be on the 53-man of that team in that situation. If he does then clear waivers, then the Chargers are allowed to stash him on their practice squad with an exemption spot. So usually you get 16 players on your practice squad. The Chargers would get a 17th spot, an exemption spot, that 17th spot that would go to Okoye, and then they would have that exemption spot for, I believe, 2 years before they would have to then put him on like a regular practice squad or anything like that. So that's probably what's going to happen. Listen, it's a great story. I think that what tells you everything about that story is just how the rest of the defensive linemen have been reacting to the way he's been playing. After he got the sack on Saturday, the whole sideline went nuts. Today, he won a one-on-one rep. And again, just like the amount of energy that they have when he's playing well. I think, I talked to Morgan Fox in the locker room after the game on Saturday, and I think they're just in complete disbelief that somebody could play in their first organized football game in the National Football League, and even against backups, get a sack. It's they can't even wrap their mind around it. Something that a lot of these guys have been working at their entire lives to get to this point. And he's just so athletically gifted that he can go in there and be a functional player in a real NFL game. I know, not like a regular season game, but to go in there and be functional in that environment is pretty impressive. So that's the Okoye situation. I figure we just saw a question on there, so I figured just get that up off the top. Just keep throwing your questions in there. If I didn't answer it earlier, then just throw it back in and I'll get to it. How's Joey Bosa been looking? He looks great. I mean, he put on 15 to 20 pounds this offseason. And I think the one thing that you're really seeing is like he wanted that extra weight to play with some more power. And so he was playing at probably closer to like 280 when he was a 4-3 defensive end in Gus Bradley's scheme. Obviously, Brandon Staley comes in. They play a hybrid front system, but their base defense has standing edge rushers, and that's the position that Joey Bosa was playing and is still playing, obviously. And so he lost some weight because those positions do have some coverage responsibilities in base packages and certain alignments. And so he wanted to be a little bit lighter to be able to do those coverage things. But I think this offseason, he really felt like he needed to put on that weight to have the power, both as a rusher and a run defender. And you're really seeing that power show up in pass rushing, particularly. It's hard to like get a real sense on the run game because he's not tackling to the ground in these practices. But there was a rep today in one-on-one against Rashawn Slater where he just came with a full-on charging bull rush and knocked Rashawn Slater back like 5 yards. Typically in those situations, Rashawn is able to, even if he loses initially, reset his anchor. I think I wrote about it earlier this training camp. It's what I think is the most impressive part of his game is just he can lose his balance and then reset an anchor and win on second effort in those situations. It just is a testament to his strength and his body control and his balance. On this play, though, that Joey just had way too much power and he drove Rashawn back and then was able to kind of bench press him off and then one to the inside. Though that's where you see it, that type of power against even the elite tackles. And that's obviously where Rashawn Slater is. And so I think you're going to see Joey Bosa able to really use that power more often. And then when you can use that power and get an offensive tackle thinking about your power, it opens up everything else in your pass rushing arsenal, whether that's trying to bend on the outside, using spin moves, different counters, and then getting into some more of the finesse moves that obviously Joey Bosa has in his toolbox. But everything for him, stems from number one, his hand usage, which is elite, and then supplementing it with some of that power, I think will open things up for him. And that's sort of what I've seen from him so far. I miss doing these. This is fun. Might get back into the swing of things. Casey, congrats on the upcoming wedding. Appreciate it, Casey. Thanks a lot. I heard LeBron is joining the Chargers. Is this true? Can't confirm or deny. Has Staley said if any of the stars will play this preseason at all? So he said basically it's not going to be much different than previous seasons, and they don't play their starters, and they shouldn't play their starters. Like with this team, they just have to get to week one healthy. That's been the priority since Staley got here. I think it's the right strategy. Even last season, they got to week one relatively healthy, and everyone saw what happened even with that. And so like all of the guys that didn't play last week probably aren't going to play. Almost certainly aren't going to play. And then you could probably, as the preseason goes on, you'll probably add people to that list. Like I would be surprised if Zion Johnson, and Jamari Salyer play. Trying to think who else. For the most part, I think everyone else that played should play again. Those are really the only two guys. If I think of somebody else, I'll mention it. But those are probably the only two guys that I don't know if they'll play again. How's Jared Clark looking and chances of making the 53? Yeah, I think he's looked good. I see him more as a practice squad player at this point, but there is an open spot on the defensive line. Let me pull up my running 53-man Excel sheet that I've been doing. I have like bubble guys and all that stuff. So, right now, like if I had to say right now, will Austin Johnson and Otito Ogbonnia be ready for week one? I would say no. That's what I feel like right now, based on what I'm seeing from them, how much they're doing in the rehab area, that type of stuff. And so, without those two guys, you effectively have, two open spots in the defensive line room on the 53-man. So what I have right now is Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Scott Matlock, their 6th-round pick out of Boise State, Christopher Hinton, who played for them down the stretch of last season, who they're really high on. And then those two spots I have going to Nick Williams, who they signed as a free agent, veteran guy, played in this scheme before. I think that was an insurance policy signing in the case that Austin Johnson and Tito Ogbonnia were not ready. Both those guys are rehabbing from knee injuries, by the way, that they suffered last season. And so he feels like he's going to be on the roster because that signing felt like it was the insurance policy for these guys. And then so you have one spot open there. for if they do keep 6 defensive linemen, which they could end up not doing. And so the guy that I feel like has distanced himself from the rest of the pack so far through camp is David Moa, who was on the practice squad last year. But Jared Clark could be in that mix. I just haven't seen a ton of splash plays from him. Whereas with David Moa, I've seen him make a ton of splash plays as a run defender and as a pass rusher. But that's a spot that I'm watching, and there's certainly like a lot more to go here. I think these last 2 preseason games will tell you a lot about, how that defensive line room is going to shape up. I have no undrafted free agents making the 53-man. I honestly didn't even consider that. Let me look through and see. No, I mean, in reality, like it's really hard for undrafted free agents to make the roster. And I think like if no undrafted free agents make the roster, that's probably an indication of the strength of the roster, that you have good depth pieces already built in, guys that are entering their second year. And outside of Elijah Dotson, I haven't seen any of these undrafted free agents really pop. And except for AJ Finley today, I should throw AJ Finley out there. I don't think he's going to be able to crack the 53. But he had a pick of Justin Herbert in 11 on 11 today during that simulated overtime period. It was just a tremendous play. They had Keenan kind of running on a swing route as a little dummy. Herbert kind of faked to Keenan and then was trying to hit a quick throw to Gerald Everett on a little post route. And so it's kind of like fake the swing and then turn and throw real quickly to Gerald Everett before the defense could reset. And I saw Gerald cutting in, and I was like, oh, that's completion, explosive play. I think Herbert kind of threw it off his back foot a little bit. That could have been part of the design of the play, like get it out quickly after faking the swing pass. But AJ Finley made a great break on the ball and picked it off and really should have set up the backups for a win in that simulated overtime. But Cameron Dicker missed a 52-yard field goal. So that's a guy I should throw out there. A lot of these undrafted guys are going to end up on the practice squad. You can throw Elijah Dotson there, AJ Finley, Taiwan Mullen, cornerback, undrafted free agent, has been playing really well. Cam Brown, a cornerback, has been playing really well. Those are some guys that are like I feel like really confident about in terms of making the practice squad. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you don't have undrafted free agents in your 53-man. It's probably an indication that you have a really strong roster in other places, and that some of these depth pieces that you've drafted in previous years are coming along. Let me see if I'm forgetting anyone undrafted free agent wise. It's on my bubble right now. Yeah, I think that's a good mix there. Who else? Yeah. Oh, and then two, Andrew Farmer and Brevin Allen are 2 guys that I forgot to mention. I think those guys are real candidates for the practice squad. I think they both made plays as edge rushers. Is Dustin Hopkins just trade bait? No, I mean, entering training camp, I think they wanted to have a real competition there. I think they like both kickers. Both kickers had played well for them. Hopkins obviously got here halfway through 2021, kicked really well down the stretch, and was kicking really well before he hurt his hamstring in week 5. I mean, he won that game for them in Denver, basically. But then you bring in Dicker, and Dicker was really, really good. And so you have 2 kickers. That's like I think like having 2 potential starters at one position is always a really good thing. And that's what they had. And they were going to go into camp and see which guy came out on top. Hopkins has this injury, hasn't kicked since day 2. And so now you kind of have the scenario where, Dicker's running away with it. He's kicking well, but not necessarily because he's been automatic. It's just like he's the only kicker now available. So, I think if you have an injured kicker, I don't know if that's necessarily a super tantalizing option as a trade piece. So, like in theory, he should probably get back into practice, or at least kick in a preseason game to show the rest of the league that he's like healthy. But no, I don't think the plan was for him to be trade bait. I don't necessarily think he's trade bait right now because he's injured. I just think that that's kind of how it shook out. Like he got hurt, and now Dicker's sort of running away with it, and we'll see what happens here over the last, 2 weeks of camp. Peter Marsh checking in from Sydney, Australia. Shout out to Australia. We are global here at Hops of Pop. Might I remind you? 2 or 3 QBs. I have him with 2 right now. I don't feel great about it. I wouldn't be shocked if they kept 3 quarterbacks. They have this emergency quarterback rule this year. I think every team's going to handle it differently. I think heading into camp, I sort of thought that they would lean toward that because you get effectively an extra player up on game day. But the alternate argument is that, that player on the 53-man could be depth at another place. Like, for example, we're talking about keeping 6 defensive linemen versus 5 defensive linemen, right? That player, if that player is not on the 53-man, you suffer an injury at defensive line. Now you only have 4 healthy defensive linemen. You have to bring somebody up. If you cut a defensive lineman, he's on the practice squad. He could potentially be, signed by any team at any moment. That's risky. And additionally, it just forces you to make roster moves when you could just have that player available on the 53-man. So, that's the argument for not keeping 3. The argument for keeping 3 is that you get to, so right now you're allowed 47 players active on game day, every 53-man roster. You can elevate that to 48 if that 48th player is an offensive lineman. You have 8 offensive linemen active. And then the quarterback would be effectively a 49th player active on game day. But that quarterback can only play if your first 2 quarterbacks are injured or disqualified. And so, you're not the only scenario where you would use that third quarterback is if you're in some disastrous situation, catastrophic situation where your first 2 quarterbacks are injured. It happened obviously last year with the 49ers in the playoffs, which is why they made the rule. But I think you're weighing how much value does that emergency quarterback have versus a defensive lineman, for example, that you can have on your active roster and be available in case somebody gets injured. So you don't have to make a move for the practice squad or subject that player to waivers. So that's the give and take there. I think they're going to go with 2 right now. My final 53-man will come out after the final preseason game on the 25th, so I could change my mind by then. But I also think part of it, too, is that, if we look back on how the Chargers have structured their roster under Staley, they kept three quarterbacks in 2021 and 2022 with Chase Daniel as the backup and Easton Stick as the third string. Easton Stick was inactive for every game. I think there was a real concern that Stick would get claimed on waivers by a team if he was cut. I don't think that the same danger exists with Max Duggan. I think that he would clear waivers and the Chargers would be able to stash him on their practice squad. And so I think that might be a little bit of a difference, again, in terms of how they're structuring their roster from year to year, even with this, third quarterback, emergency quarterback rule bylaw that the owners passed for this year. Odds of fullback, Xander Horvath will make the team. I'm 99.9% sure of that because he is on every single first team special teams unit right now. He's he is a fullback. That is that's his position technically, but you should look at Xander Horvath as a special teams player. That is his primary role. They really like him as a special teams player. He has speed. He has athleticism. He has a lot of versatility. They can play him in a lot of different places on a lot of different coverage units, particularly. And then he has a linebacker background too. He was recruited as a linebacker before he became a running back, tailback at Purdue. And so that's his primary role. He's a staple. He's a core 4 guy, as they call it, which means that he plays on punt return, kickoff, and kick return. And so that's his primary role. He's one of, I think, 3 or 4 guys that are real core 4 guys for them. And so those players have a lot of value, and that's why they're keeping Xander Horvath. So I wouldn't necessarily look at it as they're keeping a fullback. I think I would look at it as they're keeping Xander Horvath. That's the sort of the difference in terms of how I would frame it. JC Jackson will not be the same. Okay. We'll wait and see on that one. JC Jackson close to 100% by week 1. I think there's two conversations here with JC. I think is he 100% physically, and then is he 100% confident in the knee, right? Those are two very different things. So you have like the physical rehab, which is obviously extremely important, but you also have the mental rehab that goes into coming back from an injury of that significance, right? Like there's not that many guys that have suffered ruptured patellar tendons in the NFL. There's not a lot of precedent, right? Like the one guy that I can think of is Victor Cruz, like a prominent guy, who had this type of injury. And so like you tear an ACL, it's devastating, it's awful. But there's been so many instances of guys tearing their ACL. Now every injury is different, obviously, but there is precedent in terms of how long it should take and what it should look like and all of these things. Like this is in a lot of ways some uncharted territory. And so like this injury, how significant it is, like he has to regain confidence in his knee, his ability to play the way that he wants to play, to make the cuts that he wants to play. Like I think the humanity in players gets lost a lot of the time. And like you don't think about the fact that, is he going to trust that knee to hold up when he goes and breaks on a football? And physically, right, it might 100% of the time hold up, but he also has to 100% trust it to be able to play at the same level. And so I would keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, like I am starting to see the confidence from him. But this is going to be a process. Like it's not going to be like he gets on the field in week 1 and is like an all pro level player. Like it's going to be a process for him. That could happen. Absolutely. I don't want to speak in absolutes here. But like there will be some ups and downs here as he learns to trust it. I think Thursday and Friday this week are going to be really big because these joint practices are the closest thing that you're going to get to like regular season action before the regular season starts. It's ones against ones. It's all your best players. You're going up against another team and it's intense. And so I think these 2 days, like if he can play well or make some plays, not like play a perfect 2 practices, but play well, make some plays and move around there and feel confident in the knee, I think that's going to be absolutely massive for him moving forward. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty there. I don't think anyone can say for sure, yeah, he's going to be 100% when you factor in those 2 different facets that are going into, this rehabilitation process for him. So does that make sense? All right. Mark Webb or Lane right now? Well, that answer is in the practice report for today. If anyone has read the practice report and wants to let Brandon know what the answer is, go ahead. But I will tell you a lot of these questions that you're asking, I answer in detail in my practice report. And I promise you, and I say this all the time, I'm a much better writer than I am talker. Oh, no, you're good, Brandon. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out like that. I was just kidding. It was a joke. But yeah, I'll answer it. Now I feel bad. So Mark Webb was playing over Raheem Lane today. So Alohi was out, obviously. And so JT Woods kind of took over Alohi's snaps. So it was Derwin James and JT Woods as the starting safeties. And then Derwin James moves around. And so, he'll play in the slot, which Brandon Staley calls his star position. And then he'll also play as like a dime backer and dime packages, which are 6 defensive back packages. That's like a hybrid linebacker safety role. They call that their money position. When Derwin moves to those 2 other positions in 5 and 6 DB packages, you have to bring on another safety to play on the back end. And so when Alohi's been on the field, it's been Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. And then when Derwin moves around, it's been JT coming on and replacing Derwin when he moves around. Today, it was Mark Webb coming on. So when Derwin moved, Mark Webb was coming in and playing on the back end with JT Woods. I think Mark Webb's had a really good camp. They were really high on him when they drafted him. He's had some injuries over his first 2 years. He got injured in both training camps. But, he's got size. He's got really good instincts. He plays aggressive. He has the play style. That's what Brandon Staley says a lot. He has the play style that they're looking for. And, he's also been, a key cog in some of these special teams units. So I think, Mark Webb's trajectory is looking up right now if he can stay healthy. I think he's going to make the team. And right now he's playing over Raheem Lane. So, but all that was in the practice report. Could have just read that. Just kidding, Brandon. Didn't mean to call you out like that. Sorry, man. Guilty as charged in the chat. What's up, Steven? He's got a question here. Might this team go hunting for defensive linemen on cutdown day with Austin Johnson and Otito Abonia unlikely to play? Certainly possible. Yeah, certainly possible. It's not like a detailed answer, but I mean, that would certainly be on the table. I think those five, I think they would feel pretty good about. Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Scott Matlock, Christopher Hinton, Nick Williams. I think that's a pretty solid five. I think they have a decent player in Scott Matlock. He's got real size. I think body type wise, he really fits what Brandon Staley is looking for on the interior of the defensive line. He's aggressive, plays angry. He's got that violence in terms of how he goes about defending the run and rushing the passer too. He's got the length they're looking for. And so I think he could be a decent player. And then, like I said, Nick Williams, a veteran guy who, he's looked really good in terms of just being like a clogging run defender during camp. So you feel good about those five. The question is, do they want to keep six? If they don't feel good about any of these other young guys that are playing, maybe they keep five and look for a defensive lineman that they like to potentially add to that group during the, in between cutdown period and week one. I would not rule that out. I just saw a question here. Yeah, John Johnson wasn't signed when it seemed like a lock. Well, it was never a lock. I haven't gotten to the bottom of that one yet. When I do, I'll write about it. But when I saw John Johnson sign with the Rams, I figured it was going to be for more money. He signed for, this is according to Over the Cap, he signed for like $1 million and counted $940,000 against the cap. So I can't tell you exactly why. I think part of it is that they want to give JT Woods this opportunity. They drafted him in the 3rd round. They feel really good about him, and they feel like he can really impact the game in the deep part of the field. I have some concerns about JT Woods. I don't know if you guys watch the press conferences. I'm the guy that's asking about JT Woods every single time Brandon Staley's up there, every single time Derek Ansley's up there. Partly because I want to align what I'm seeing with what they're thinking. Now, obviously, when they're at the podium, they're not going to be fully honest. But for a guy that was drafted to be a proficient deep field defender, I just don't see the instincts. I don't see the feel that good players in that area of the field have. You can always tell when you're watching these practices who has a really good feel and good vision in the deep part of the field. You see flashes of it 100%. I wrote about it. I would point everybody to my practice report from day, whatever it was. Someone can tell you, day 5 or day 6. You see moments. Even yesterday, he had a play against Darius Davis in the deep part of the field where he got turned around a little bit, but turned his hips and really showed his closing speed. And so the instincts are there. I just don't know how consistent they are. And there's too many plays where he's the last defender and he's just getting beat. There's a play today off play action where Mike Williams ran wide open. Now, I don't know 100% that was on JT Woods, but he and Jasir Taylor were there. I mean, he's a safety, and typically the safety's role, especially his role with the player that they want him to be, is to be that last defender and to go make plays in the deep part of the field. And so you've just seen that a lot of times where guys are running past him and he's a bit out of position. And I would point you to that practice report because I had a really good chat with defensive backs coach Tommy Donatel. He was super insightful just about how they're coaching him, what they need from him, how they're using specific drills during individual drills to kind of teach him habits of how to play, how to read routes, how to anticipate, all these types of things. But if I was running the team, which I'm obviously not, I would have liked one more piece at safety to protect myself against JT Woods not being the player that they think he's going to be. Because everything's on the line this season. Like, they have to win, period, full stop. And so you're an Alohi Gilman injury away from JT Woods playing not 15 to 20 snaps a game, but 60, 70 snaps a game. And to not have any contingency plan for that reality, I think was a mistake. And it didn't, now that I'm seeing the contract come out for Johnston, like it wasn't like a financially difficult move to make. Now I can't tell you what Johnston was looking for. I don't know if he looked at the Chargers roster and said, I want to be a starter. I'm not going to start here, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all possibilities. And this is more of a general conversation than a specific Johnston conversation. But I just feel like because of the stakes of this season, you need to have contingencies, real legitimate contingencies built in at every position. And I feel like they've done that everywhere except for safety, where they're putting all of their chips on the table and saying that JT Woods is going to be the player that we think he's going to be. And from my time covering the league, which is closing on a decade now, when you are banking on a young player becoming something and taking a big step, that is usually a bad position to be in. And you usually want a contingency plan built in, especially in a situation like this where the stakes are so high. So that's my overall feeling on all of that. I see a lot of potential in him. I see what these coaches see in JT Woods. I do. But at this level, like, you have to be consistent, not just show flashes. Like, if you're in this position where you are going to be a prominent piece in a defense, you have to show more consistency than what I've seen from JT Woods this year. Now, he could develop into that player. He, that switch could flip, right? And week one, he can come out and be that deep field defender that I think he can be. I just haven't seen it yet in training camp, and I can only base my opinion off of what I'm seeing in training camp. I'm going to say this right now because we might get back into doing some streamings. I don't like the, is so-and-so or so-and-so going to get fired if this hypothetical happens. I'm not going to get into that. I don't think it's fair because we will trust me, we will have those conversations when the time comes and when they're relevant. But I just don't right now. I just don't feel like that's productive or informative or instructive, like, for anybody to like have those types of conversations. We'll see what happens, right? And then if things go south, trust me, we will have those conversations, and I will write extensively about it. I saw a good question here. Super excited that I got to say hi at camp yesterday, says Hannah. I think, Hannah, you were the one that yelled out, "Are you Daniel Popper?" And I said yes, and I gave you a wave and said hello. Thank you so much for saying hi. I love when you guys say hi to me at camp. So if you're there on Thursday or Friday, like, give me a shout. I'm just a normal dude. Like, I'll just come say hi and have a chat. Like, but I always appreciate people that are that excited to meet me because I don't think I'm that. I don't think I'm that sensational. So I appreciate it. And Hannah has a question as well. Do you know why Hopkins hasn't taken any reps? Has it just been injury? What we've been told is that it was an injury. I haven't been able to double check on it since then, but yes, initially injury, most likely still injury now. And that's sort of what I have on Dustin Hopkins. Asante versus Jasir. Asante's really pulled away in that competition. He's taking, in practices, he's either taking all of the reps at slot star, or the vast majority of them. So, but again, like, going back to what we were talking about with JC Jackson, like, this is why you want depth, because if JC has his ups and downs during the season, early in the season particularly, then you have a contingency plan, which is what I'm talking about. So you have a player in JC Jackson who's coming back from a significant injury. what is your contingency plan? Well, if JC can't play, then we can move Asante outside and Jasir Taylor can play in the slot. And, is it an all worlds group of cornerbacks? No, there are deficiencies, but it's uh, palatable, right? Like they can get the job done, right? It's a group that you can trust. It's a group that's good enough for you to go out and win football games. Are Quentin Johnston's drops a major concern? No, straight up, not a major concern. Let's talk about Quentin a little bit. So, like, this shouldn't be like a huge surprise. I don't know how much of you like really follow the draft, so we can get into that now. Like, he had these issues in college. Like, he dropped a lot of footballs his senior season. So like it's not a surprise to anybody that like watched him in college that he drops the footballs. Like, it happens, right? And like some players have outstanding hands. Some guys are 90% catch rate. Some guys are less than that. The Chargers drafted him knowing that. All right. And so the first point I want to make is that they drafted Quentin Johnston, knowing that he was going to have time to develop. He didn't have to come in and be like a number 2 receiver right off the bat. And that was important. If he had gone into a different situation, the drops would be a bigger concern, I think, because he would be on the field for every single offensive snap. That's not going to be Quentin Johnston this season. They have 2 elite receivers. They have another really, really good receiver in Josh Palmer, who's at a great camp. So Quentin Johnston is the 4th receiver on this roster, which means that as he learns the finer details of playing the position, they can early on in the season sort of shrink and define his role so that he's doing things that he understands and can do at a really high level, and that maximize his athleticism. So that's shrinking his route tree, right? That's slants and digs and go balls and jet sweeps, and putting him in a situation where he can just let his athleticism take over. Like, and the other thing that I will add is, has he dropped some balls? Yeah. But has he also made some absolutely outrageously explosive plays? Yes. And that is why the Chargers drafted him. So if he drops a ball here and there, fine. But as long as he is making those explosive plays, like, they'll take that in year 1. Absolutely. So he is a difference maker after the catch. Like, he is special after the catch. And like, the way that he's able to catch the ball with his back turned to a defensive back and pull away from that defensive back without being touched is something that I haven't really seen before. It's happened multiple times in camp where he'll catch a little curl and he'll just turn in one motion and hit the sideline. And the way that he's able to accelerate and hit top speed, I mean, he'll pull away from that defensive back without being touched. And then, like, you add in these other types of routes, right? If you can catch the ball on the move, on a slant, on a dig, and catch it while moving horizontally, like, boom, he catches it, and his first step, he's pulling away. And so, again, young player, he came in raw. I think, like, his route running and releases are way ahead of where I thought they would be at this point. He's really sharp in that area, and I think a lot of it is watching Keenan Allen every day, and then a lot of it too is wide receivers coach Chris Beatty, who's coaching him up on all of these things. And so, like, he's not even as raw as I thought he was going to be. His route running, I think you guys saw it in the preseason game, that route that he ran from the slot there, shaking the defender, cutting inside, and winning there with a great throw from Easton Stick. Like, that's the stuff that we've seen throughout camp. So he's fine. The drops are real. The hands thing is real. I'll tell you that. But it's something that you can improve on. And like, with a player like him, you'll take some drops if he's making explosive plays. And so that's what's happening right now. So I don't think it's anything to be overly concerned about. All right. I'll take one more question. Beer's done. Pops are done. Pop's done. Let's do one more question. Jordan Katz with the music question. Not going to answer the music question. DM me though on Twitter. I'll respond there. Got a new song dropping September 1st, by the way. Check me out on Spotify. I should throw my Spotify in here. Throw my Spotify in. Why not, right? Throw my Spotify in the chat. Go check me out, will you? I saw a couple good ones. I might do like 2 or 3 more questions because you guys got some good questions. The Staley Ansley working dynamic, how does it differ from the Staley Hill combo? I think the biggest thing with Derek Ansley is just there's a different energy to how he coaches. He's super animated, and the way that he sort of structures the defensive individual drills, he gets the whole team together. They go through the bag drills. There's just a little extra spark, a little extra energy with Derek Ansley, and I think that style is maybe a better fit for the coaching staff and for how Staley wants to do things. We'll do some quick hitters here. Dayon Henley. Okay, I was gonna write about him today, but I didn't have enough space. So, physicality, like that is like Dayon Henley is violent. Like he loves contact. And I think that's a big reason why the Chargers drafted him is they love, again, like Staley says, play style. When you talk about play style, like this is what he's talking about. Like that guy hits people. Now, does he have a long way to go in terms of understanding, the finer details of playing linebacker in the NFL? Yeah. And, that's a slight concern because he's, they don't have a ton of depth at linebacker, but I think, Eamon Ogbongbemiga and Nick Neiman are ascending. I think they both look good in camp. But like when he becomes the fully realized version of himself, and when you see him more regularly playing games, that's the first thing that's going to jump out to you is like he is just a violent hitter. And in some of these one-on-one drills, like they had a one-on-one drill today where like the running backs and tight ends would start on the sideline, and they were just like running at each other. Like in the linebackers and safeties had to tackle the tight ends and running backs. I mean, he's just crushing people. Like you talk about like pads popping and like hearing the sound of a football practice. I mean, he plays with that type of violence. And so like, I wouldn't expect like a ton of contributions from him on defense early in the season, but that type of play style and with his athleticism is always going to be super value on special teams. And that's really where you're going to see him make the most impact early on in his career. All right. K9 overall improved or just benefiting from Kendricks? I have a full story on Kenneth Murray and his development coming out on Thursday. So I'll leave you guys with that little tease. If you want to read that story, subscribe to The Athletic. Link below, click it, and subscribe. And with that, we will end our first Hops with Pop in 7 months. It was great getting back to do this. It was great chatting with you guys again. And we're back in the season now. So, maybe we'll hop on here and do a few streams here and there. How's that sound? Yeah? All right, friends. Off tomorrow, Kenneth Murray story Thursday morning. All the details and highlights from joint practices will be in my practice reports on Thursday and Friday. Preseason game Sunday. Takeaways off that. So lots coming. Subscribe to The Athletic. Love you all. Peace.